I don't think Bronwyn wanted to kiss him.
I have a reputation in this country anyway for giving away secrets.
You say, yeah.
What about them? Them fresh.
Do you know what female orcs look like?
I nearly took out a couple of people's eyes walking around with that on.
It's a trick. It's a trap.
The filthy orcs.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
It's become a meme that's used all over the world. We don't believe we're the bad guys.
We're all worried about who Sauron is.
Uruk Nampat, the blue-eyed, good-looking orc.
Everybody in this show's Sauron.
Fabio's a looker. He's a looker.
Yes,
Great.
This guy's crazy.
He's kind of like the Vigo of the show for me. I have an action figure.
Seems like you're the one being touched by darkness right now.
Or maybe you die.
Is that a true story?
We are super excited to bring you a special edition of Across the Sundering Seas. For the first time ever, we have 2 episodes in 1 week.
It could be for none other than Jed Brophy, who, if you've ever watched any Lord of the Rings or Hobbit films, you've seen him whether you know it or not.
Welcome to the podcast, Jed.
My name's Jed Brophy, and I'm the lucky Kiwi. I not only got to be in all 3 of the original Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies, but I also came back and then was in all 3 of the Hobbit movies. And now, by fate and chance, I'm also in the new Rings of Power, playing various of the Ashak Rukshul, as the Kusta would call them, the filthy orcs.
How did you get connected with the films originally?
So I was really lucky that I did an early Peter Jackson movie called Braindead, which is a zombie splatter movie set in the 1950s. And I was doing a play by a writer called Stephen Sinclair, who was the co-writer of Braindead, also co-wrote the original Lord of the Rings scripts. And Peter came and saw the play and offered me a part in his film. And then when it came to Lord of the Rings, they wanted to use people that they'd used before, that they knew could work in creature suits. And I also got to do the original radio play that they used to take to Hollywood to get the money. So I'd been involved right from 1997. Just right place, right time, right country.
What roles have you played?
I played one of the Black Riders on horseback and also on the Fell Beast. I played a Musalafundal, an elf, when Arwen is leaving Middle Earth. I got to play Schnaga, who wants to eat Merry and Pippin in Fanghorn Forest, and then Shaku, who beats up Aragorn when he goes over the cliff. I played a Rohan captain who finds the dying Theodred at the Fords of Isen, along with Emma. And then I have various Rohans and Gondorians, because I was also one of the 20 full-time horse trainers working on the film.
Who did you play in the Hobbit movies?
I played Nori with the starship, the star hairdo. It was great coming back and doing that, because I knew that would just be such a great time, having worked on the Lord of the Rings movies. I knew that the camaraderie we would build up would be a fantastic thing.
Those films were my introduction into Tolkien, and then I started reading the books and all of that. So one of my favorite lines is when they have the 2 hobbits and they throw them down and they say that they're starving. And then you say, yeah, I haven't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days, right? It's like one of my favorite lines from the movies. And then you say, I believe it's you still, you say, what about them? They're fresh.
Yeah, why can't we have some meat? What about them? Them fresh.
I love that. Then the older orc gets his head cut off. And then the probably most infamous line is delivered. Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. And I'm sure you've talked about that line a whole bunch over the years. But it's funny to me because it implies that there is a restaurant in Mordor, maybe, and that orcs go to it.
And there's a menu.
And maybe order from a menu.
We did those films before social media was really a thing. I remember watching the very first 20 minutes of the film cut together on an old dial-up computer, and it took ages for it to come on, and then it kept crashing because everybody in the ward was watching that 20 minutes. And to become a meme that's used all over the world is kind of, it's not something we ever signed up for, but it's certainly kind of cool, you know. I've always said to people, they say, what kind of projects do you do now? I'm like, the ones where I get an action figure, because then I can give those away, you know, to people.
So this new TV show came along. You've probably been hearing the rumblings of it for years. Were you instantly like, I've got to be back in this?
They were looking for a certain type of orc look, I think, and they were talking to people at Weta Workshop who said, well, we've got some actors, friends of ours, who actually were in the original movies. I think that's kind of how it came about. I didn't do an audition, so that's kind of, it was one of those phone calls from my agent saying, would you be interested? And of course, because I'm a huge fan of Tolkien, I grew up reading the books. I'm a long-time friend of Roy Tolkien, the great-grandson, so I know a lot about the family history, but I also grew up reading the books and just love that kind of literature, that fantasy literature. So as soon as the offer came, I was like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Who have you played so far? Where have we seen you in the first 6 episodes?
So I play a character called Vrath. He's the blue-eyed, good-looking orc with the white helmet who tries to kill Theo to get the artifact, whatever that artifact is. Not that I can say what it is, but it's a thing. And then there's a character who I call Fabio, the orc. He's actually a green-skinned orc he's the one who's been killing all of the people in episode 6 in the tavern for Adar.
Give yourself some credit. Fabio's a looker. He's a looker for sure.
I kept trying to get them to give him a name. And they just kept saying he's a warlord. I'm going, yeah, okay, but you know, Vrath had a name. What about? So I named him Fabio because there was a whole deal about him wearing a helmet, and I vetoed it. It was really difficult. It was one of those negotiations with the costume department where they wanted me to have a helmet. I was like, this makeup is so good. You don't want to hide this. This hair is, you know, it's banging. I want him to have no helmet. And finally on the day we came to shoot that scene inside the tower, costume designer came up to me. She said, wow, his hair's amazing. We can't cover that. And I'm like, yes, I won. Great.
As I was watching it, I was trying to make note and see if I guess Fabio, if Fabio makes it to the end of the episode or not. Does he? I don't know if you can say these things or not, but does he make it through all the battles?
Fabio is a survivor.
Oh,
that's what I'm going to say. Survivor. Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
I was sad to see Vrath, lose his head, but glad Fabio's got new life.
I've only ever made it through one Middle Earth film with my head, and I think The Hobbit. So
for me, I'm looking at Adar going, okay, this is the bad guy. And the whole time he's been saying my children and this and that, and I'm just like, this guy's crazy. And then episode 6 begins with a battle speech that a good guy would normally deliver, right? And you see him, we later find out he's planting those seeds, in defiance of death, right? Life in defiance of death. And all of a sudden I'm going, wait, Adar might not be crazy. I think he's still the bad guy, obviously, but he might not be crazy. And he really has this idea that they need to blot the sun out so that the orcs can have a place of their own, so they can actually have a home. How much of that do they put into y'all with scripts and everything like that? Is there backstory that actually happens like that with y'all, or y'all just go kill some people?
No, we were lucky that we got to sit with Joseph, who plays Adar, and he had done a lot of work with the showrunners and with the writers to try and create this idea that we had our own life, that the 1,000 years that we hadn't been seen by humans or by elves or by the dwarves was us trying to reclaim our homeland. We're creatures that are made by the gods as well. Our origins were from the elves, and we have a master, and we don't believe we're the bad guys. We're just trying to get our own homeland. That was the ethos that Joseph kind of put to us, that Uruk sitting around the table. And it was really, for me, it was not just fascinating, but it was really kind of it was kind of like this nurturing thing of like, yeah, it's like they've always just been these funny bad guys that get killed off, but to have this kind of real backstory and give it a real breath of life, that this is us trying to reclaim something that's been taken away from us. that gave us an incentive to try and create something that was real for the fans as well. If you're just playing the bad guy, there's kind of nothing at stake. You know you're going to end up being killed. But if you're playing someone who thinks they're good, then there's a lot more at stake, and you put a lot more into it, I think.
Another thing in that opening speech, Adar says that y'all fight together as brothers and sisters, implying that there are female orcs amongst us here. I haven't really seen one yet. Do you know what female orcs look like?
My character hasn't seen one either. We do know that they exist, and some of our players in the creature suits were women. So there are female orcs. I just personally didn't see one up close, so I couldn't really say. But yes, apparently they were there, and apparently they're around. And I don't know because I haven't seen the next 2 episodes, but who knows? We may yet get to see them. Maybe they work at the restaurant.
Maybe. What does Nampat mean?
Death.
Okay.
Death.
There's the line in episode 6 where it's like, it doesn't say Nampot, but it says Nampush or something like that. And
Nampuk.
Yeah, Nampuk, that's what it was. And so I saw that it said death.
Yeah, that means kill them all. Nampuk. Kill them all.
I thought that might be related. So that's cool. That's cool to hear.
And then there's an orc. I'm wondering, it's Bazzer. Is he a lieutenant?
Yeah, that's my mate Philly Grieve, and yeah, he's a lieutenant. He's kind of like he's the one telling us what to do. It's like we do have a hierarchy within orcdom. You know, my character's a general as well. He's got men underneath him. If you see us, there's a scene where we all come into the village. There's myself and another character bring a group of orcs from different places to that kind of meeting point to then take over the village, and we're all assigned kind of jobs to do, but also we have a phalanx of people behind us that we're in charge of. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this was there were 3 or 4 of us that had been in the original Lord of the Rings, and so we wanted to really G the stunt performers and the action performers and the extras up. So we would do that Uruk Nampat before every scene and get them almost like doing a kind of this big chant, kind of getting a feeling of unity, a feeling that we're all in this together, because it was kind of hard nights, hard days. So it was nice kind of referring back to what it was like having that camaraderie on Lord of the Rings too on the original films.
Did I see when the tower collapsed that Bazir got crushed, and is he dead now?
Yeah, I don't want to tell Phil's story for him, but there is a funny story that goes with that where he asked the question and then the answer was, well, maybe you die.
He spoke up one too many times, huh?
Yeah. So after that, I asked no questions.
To me, it seems like if your character dies, they're just going to bring you back as another character. I guess that's the good thing of all the prosthetics. You can revive yourself in a couple different ways.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's not everybody's cup of tea. Like I didn't set out being an actor to do prosthetic work, but if you're good at it and you can work subtlety into something that's really quite hard to work with, and also be able to be big in that as well, and also kind of handle the long days, because an average day for someone in prosthetics is 17 to 19 hours. That's a long day. You're getting there at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're getting out of there at 7 or 8 at night, and so it's not everybody's cup of tea. But the upside of that, the positive, is that you can come back as multiple characters, which can be a lot of fun.
You talk about the subtlety. I was thinking about this. Even Joseph playing Adar, he's got a decent amount of prosthetics, it seems, and that's the scene where he has to kill the orc. The emotion that he's able to convey through the prosthetic, and then all the close-ups of like you in episode 6, and all these different close-ups, the ways that you're able to still convey such emotion through the prosthetics is pretty amazing.
You have to practice it. It's one of those things where when the makeup's going on, you're sitting there in the mirror for five hours. So as each piece, because it's 9 different pieces stuck on and then blended, and you're working it to see what you can get away with it, what you can do to show emotion. But really, it's the same as any acting. If you think it will show on camera. It's just that you have to work your muscles to actually be able to do that through the prosthetics. takes a lot of practice.
We cut to a scene where he's trying to break the hilt. Did you ever get to handle the sword?
I did when we were doing rehearsals, and also, the day that I was doing the scene, chasing Theo to try and get it off him. I got to actually hold it. It's an impressive and weighty implement, actually. I asked a lot of questions as to what it was, and I never got an answer because obviously they know that I'm going to talk to people. And I have a reputation in this country anyway for giving away secrets. So people were very careful not to tell me anything about what that weapon was, where it came from. I know it's special. I know it's got special significance. They may know the backstory, but no one told the Orcs.
Talking about that scene where you're trying to get it from Theo, where sadly Vrath meets his demise. I love a good one shot scene. What was that experience like? The choreography, you come in at the end and kind of snatch him, but yeah, could you tell us about how a scene like that plays out, where you're following for a really long time, and the choreography that goes into it?
We were lucky enough, Theo and I, to have a lot of time to rehearse that. We rehearsed it a lot of different ways. And you have the stunt coordinators there on the day. Andy Stalline was kind of running the rehearsals in the rehearsal room. And we tried it various ways about how to do it, trying to kind of second guess where the camera might be, where they're going to shoot it over shoulder, where they're going to shoot it from the ground. And a lot of that is determined by how much time you have on the day. We were lucky that we had a bit of time to do that on the night shoot. And we sort of tried to run it as one with two cameras, one from behind and one in front, so that you get me grabbing him and chucking him on the ground and then sort of shooting over my shoulder down to his face. And then the reverse is having the camera down on the ground looking up from his perspective up to me. So we kind of shot it, at least 2 times. I think we probably did 3 or 4 takes for that. But it is great if you can do it as a one shot, as you say, because you get the emotion, you get the beats, you get the franticness of him trying to get away, all included in that. If you chop it up too much, you kind of lose that impetus. You lose the, especially for the person being chased, you lose that impetus to try and get away and the franticness of trying to, save your own life. I had to wear a sword rig for the bit where it comes out my chest, and you have to be careful too. I nearly took out a couple of people's eyes walking around with that on. They have the thing so that just shows the bit coming out. It kind of punches out from there, and you wear that as a rig for the stab. And then when it came for Ish actually stabbing me through the back, he actually came underneath the arm, just to make it look like he'd done it. But yeah, I mean, as an actor, you love all that stuff. If you can get to do your own stunts, if you can get to do your own fights, that really tells the story, because you don't have to have someone jump in for you.
Throughout this whole storyline in the Southlands, I've been getting Helm's Deep vibes from the Two Towers. And, I thought they were going to fight in the keep there, in the tower, and that was going to be very, very Helm's Deep-like. But then it's a trick, it's a trap, and Arondir takes the tower out, does some really cool elf things that only an elf can do, and everybody else is just in a field, and they go back to the village to set up there to fight. And I liked the quiet moments in this episode, and one of those quiet moments is when they're waiting for the orcs to arrive, and then Arondir is looking out, and he just sees one light, and the music's timed up perfectly, right? A second orc light, a third, and when they get over the bridge, they hear a little noise, and they walk over to the cart, and nobody's there, right? And then Bronwyn attacks, and the first person to die in this fight is a woman, brutally killed. And then the orc dies as well. Were you friends with that orc as well?
Yeah, I think that was a guy called Edward, actually. It was either Edward or Rob. I sort of can't really remember on the day who it was that died, but I know that we would be in the chair and we'd go, so who dies today? Is it you or is it you? Or who's it going to be? But yeah, there was a couple of young guys who I know who are stunt performers who got to be some of those characters as well, which was great for them. They got a line and got to die. If you're a stunt person, you're just getting kind of thrashed about all the time. It is a kind of a buzz when you get to actually have a featured character. I love that scene too when you see lights, because it is very similar to the Urukai arriving to Helm's Deep, where you see them from a distance and you see one or two lights, and then it kind of increases to you see the volume of it. And again, I was talking about, rallying the troops and getting them having this chant, the Numpat chant. That was very similar to getting the Urukai racked up on the day as well. There's a lot of similarities. It's almost like 20 years has come and gone in a flash.
Arondir gets pulled off the roof and drops to the ground, which would have taken me out of the fight, by the way. I'd have been done at that point. But he gets up and he's like dusting himself out, takes a step back, and a really big orc. He bumps into a really big orc and then gets the snot kicked out of him. Were you around for that scene at all? Did you get to see anything about it, or did you just watch it in the show?
No, I just watched it in the show. Mike, just trying to think what his name is now. It's a very large stunt performer called Mike. It'll come to me. Yeah, he did stuff back on the day on The Hobbit as well, and I've seen him around a lot. And he's a big boy, and he would have ragdolled. They would have loved doing that. The great thing about Ishmael is he loves doing the fight stuff. He's really good at it. He's kind of like the Vigo of the show for me. He puts in 120% effort, and he likes to get smashed around. And again, he's really good at doing capoeira and helping design his own fights. And I think he would have really Mike Honeck is the name of the stunt performer. They would have enjoyed doing that. Mike loves doing fights as well, so it would have been epic, shooting that. That's the kind of scene you want to do, that goes on and on and on.
And it ends with the knife in his eye and the blood, and it's gory, and the blood's landed on Arondir's mouth. And I don't do eye stuff well. I had LASIK done, and that was really hard for me to get done. That shot of the knife point just dangling there, I was like, Arondir's about to lose an eye. And I was like, about to lose my lunch. So
yeah, Bronwyn, I don't think Bronwyn wanted to kiss him after all that orc blood dripping on his mouth. I don't think they wanted that moment afterwards.
I think orc blood is pretty acidic. I don't think it's the kind of thing you really want to get.
The townspeople, right after that, they've won the battle, and they're out, they're cheering, they're celebrating. And then Arondir, very keen, notices that the blood is red on a lot of these people. And they realize to their horror that they mainly killed all of their old friends, all their old villagers. Another orc you played was when Aragorn went off the cliff. And then you're making fun of, Legolas and Gimli and everybody there. That kind of reminded me of a scene from episode 6, where the villagers have thought that they've won this battle, and then there's an orc laughing at them and taunting them. Did you see the similarity between those two scenes?
I did, yeah. And I think that's kind of how they're written, that they do enjoy the pain and suffering that they see on others, because that's been their entire life. I mean, I know you probably know the lore where Tolkien indicated that the orcs were elves that were stolen by Morgoth and then tortured and twisted. And in this particular representation, they've obviously been bred. We are the orcs that have been bred. And it's been a fairly arduous and torturous life so far. So we do get there's a fascination for us of other people's suffering, especially those that are seen as our enemy, for sure.
Then the arrows start flying. Bronwyn's hit. It looks pretty fatal to me. And then they fall back into the keep as the orcs come out from the woods. What are those scenes like, shooting those at night with everybody dressed up like that? What is it like?
We shot out on a farm, actually. There's a farm which is set not far from Henderson, which is the west coast of Auckland. It was nighttime. There was quite a heavy dew, so almost like a frost. So it was quite cold. I remember being in one of the tents with a big heater there, just sort of going, let's not get too comfortable, because we're going to get out in there. And then, getting the flaming torches lit. There's a whole thing around safety, getting those torches lit. It's the closest thing to being in a proper battlefield you can ever get, because the excitement is kind of built by all of the people around getting you ready for that moment to run onto set. And there was a lot of people that day. It's the most people I'd seen on a set for a long time. Huge amount of crew, a lot of camera gear, a lot of lights, takes a lot of setup. There's a lot of sitting around. And then, when it actually comes to it, yeah, it's pretty frantic and incredibly exciting. You don't really have to get the adrenaline going. It's already going for you. There's something really cool about running with a mass of people shouting and knowing that you're going to go and do damage. We weren't supposed to run into the tavern yet, but we ran into the tavern, and there was all these kind of extras kind of standing there and completely freaked out. They hadn't seen us in makeup. And there's this bunch of incredibly ugly, smelly men running at them with weapons drawn. And, if they weren't in the moment then, they certainly were afterwards.
As y'all are coming out of the woods and they're locked themselves in the tavern, they're trapped. I mean, they think they're going to just help themselves, and I don't know what they were thinking, because they have trapped themselves in a small room. And then the scene cuts to the Numenorians riding in on, I don't know how they got that many horses on those boats, but on all of their horses, every person has a horse. And I think they said there was 100 people on each boat, and there was 3 boats in the end. So it's 300 people, 300 horses. I don't know how they fit it all, but they did. And they're riding in. And then we cut back. Y'all break through the door and kind of take everybody hostage. And then Adar walks in. Were you in the tavern?
Yeah, I walk in and I was standing there. I'm standing there right by the door. And there's a lot of stuff that we shot that, of course, doesn't make the cut. But whenever Adar was about to come into the room, he kind of made this noise, which I come in and I do, and then all the others, because they're making noise in there, they're suddenly quiet. That's like, the boss is coming. You need to all just, tone it down now. So I'm standing right there, and I've got my sword on the throat of a townsperson right there. I wish that they'd played more of that stuff. We always want to, everything that we do, we want to end up on screen. But when it comes to editing an episode, they have to put the good stuff in there. But yeah, I was in there, and it was like, he is a presence. Joseph, he's a presence, man. When he's got that armor on and he's in the moment, he's really incredibly watchable. Like, it's like you don't want to be doing anything but watching what he's doing. It's he knows how to make an entrance, that character, that's for sure.
He came in and he said, "What I seek, give it to me," in Quenya. And Arondir says, "Let them go and I'll consider it." And then he just basically says no without saying no, kills a person, kills another person. And, this whole time, everybody's been thinking Theo's a bad guy. Everybody in this show is Sauron, by the way, right? And Theo's one of the Saurons in this show right now. And Theo wants the sword. I mean, it's been pretty clear that he wants the sword. But he loves his mom and doesn't want to see her die when Adar says she's next. And Theo gives up the sword. What was the tension like in the room during those scenes?
It was amazing, actually. Ishmael and Joseph had this incredible intensity between them. It was like you could hear a pin drop. It's usually you have to get people to be quiet. Everybody wants to be making noises. The orcs want to make noises because they want to be seen. Sometimes you don't have to do a lot. It comes from your lead characters. All of the main players in that scene were incredibly focused on the day. It was it's good direction as well, but it's also them really knowing what their job is. And the orcs, those of us main players in there, we were really conscious of the fact that we were feeding into that too. Like doing that slow motion kill, slow sword thing, that creates a kind of a tension in the room as well. So everybody was focused on making that a really, really tense scene. And Charlotte, the director, had done a really good job of placing it so that there was that tension and a lot at stake. This shard is obviously very important, and who knows what it will give the enemy in terms of power if it's released to them. But that love for a mother, especially, that relationship is really strong. That overcomes everything. It doesn't really matter. I'll give up my own life to save my mum. It was a great scene to be in, and exhausting. By the end of the day, you're tired because you kind of been holding your muscles tight and everything's kind of tense. It's a gift to be in a scene like that. It really is.
Going back and thinking about that scene, I think that Arondir was willing to let Bronwyn die there. It seemed like in the moment he understood the importance of what was being hidden and was willing to die himself and let Bronwyn die.
She was, she was indicating herself, and they had looks between them where she was saying, "Don't give up the shard. Whatever it takes, we're not going to let the enemy win." I think there's a fatalism in scenes like that where you go for the good of the rest of the people left living, both elven kind but also humankind. We are willing to sacrifice ourselves. I think Bronwyn, especially probably at this point, thinks, "I'm going to die anyway. This is a mortal wound. I'm probably going to die of loss of blood. So don't be trying to save me because it's a lost cause." And their love is new. It's not. That would be very difficult for me anyway. That would be a very difficult thing to do. But I think this is one of the great things about Tolkien's writing, is that they're willing to kill off their heroes. The whole Lord of the Rings is Frodo sacrificing himself for the good of everybody. And he doesn't really have to do that. He's got a good life ahead of him, but he decides to do it. Aragorn is willing to lay down his life so that Frodo can get to the mountain. Every single one of those heroes is willing to lay down their life for the good of other people. And that's a through line in all of Tolkien's writing. And I'm really glad that they had a scene like that in there.
Her acting choice, the subtle, when he says she's next, and she kind of leans her neck out saying, if this is what it has to be, let it be. It was a really good, really tense and really good moment.
And then the sword is recovered, and as soon as Adar has it, the ground starts rumbling. We all know that the Númenóreans are arriving, which again gave me Helm's Deep vibes, with Gandalf showing up with the men from, was it Rohan?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Reminded me of that. The exact moment that it had to happen. It would have been nice if they would have come a little earlier, and maybe not gotten the sword, but they showed up just before everybody was about to be killed. And we saw the Númenóreans fight, and boy, can they fight. The first thing they did, they knew they were going to be lots of orcs, so they took out a chain, and they mowed some orcs down in that moment. And I don't know that you can come back from being hit with a chain like that. I think most of them were gone in that moment. Where were you in this part?
I'd gone back in to kill. Adar sends me back in. There's a scene that we were going to shoot. I don't think we ever got to shoot it, where he hands me his sword and he says, "Kill them all." And I go back in and say, "Ushanam Puk, kill them all," as I've killed that one person. And then everyone's supposed to be slaughtered. But because I've heard the Númenóreans arriving, I then take off.
You're one of those that after the battle, they say, some of them have left, we're going to go after them. You're in that group.
I am. Yeah, we go with Adar. We actually get him onto his horse so he can take off. And then myself and another character played by Luke Hawker, we take off. We kind of like his bodyguards, and we kind of take off after him.
A very subtle thing that happens, and I didn't see it until the second watch through of this episode. As soon as Adar comes out, he tells Waldrig, I have a task for you. And then the fight starts. I didn't notice that part until my second watch through. And Adar leaves on the horse and Galadriel chases. And Halbrand, knowing the land, heads them off. That's all I can assume, that Halbrand knew where the woods they were in, the trails that it would lead. So Halbrand went around the other way and laid that horse out. And the showrunners definitely wanted everyone to know that horse was okay.
One of the things that sort of happened in the modern film period, and we had this on Lord of the Rings, we had animal health authorities on set every day to make sure that all of the falling that we did with the horses was done in a very humane way. And the people who trained the horses, they'd worked on The Hobbit as well, so they were very well versed in making sure that the horses were looked after. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know that part of the story. That was a shock to me as well. I was like, wow, they really did that. That's full on. I still don't know who he is. I want to know who this character Halbrand is. I want to know more about him.
When Galadriel was interrogating Adar, we get this like whole lore backstory.
Going back to what we talked about before with the depth that's being given to the orcs and the uruks and all of that. I think that scene builds a lot of it too. That you almost see Galadriel as the villain in this scene, and she's being ruthless and just no grace or at all or anything like that. And then and Adar is like, maybe your hunt should have ended in the mirror. Like it seems like you're the one being touched by darkness right now. And I think it builds the depth that we're given to the orcs, or what is being built for the orcs, that they need a place to live. Right now, these people are just the people that are getting in the way of them having the space to live and be comfortable. I think the depth is important, because you have villains, and there's like a hierarchy of villains, and you have so much empathy for Adar and all of these orcs, that you, even though you know they're the bad guys, you still feel for them in a way. It's really cool how they're building that.
It creates a lot more pathos, and it creates a lot more tension. If you don't care about the bad guys, there's nothing at stake. They're just dispensable. And we talked about this, and Joseph, who plays Adar, he was really, I love the fact that he was so concerned about that through line coming through. He wanted it to be, we have a saying in this country, tangata whenua, of the land, people who are from the land. The Orcs were born in Middle-earth. Fëanor's family came from Valinor. They went there, they had this amazing life, they had all these gifts given to them by the gods, and then they come back, and then they tell us to go away. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. You're telling us to get up. We never left here. We didn't go. We were scared of Arome, of the Herald. We decided that we didn't want to cross the river. We didn't want to go with the west of the Quenya. We went our own way, and we were stolen, or we were tortured, and we've become from that race. But we are from this place that you're now telling us that we don't have a place in. And so, of course, we're going to fight for it. There's nothing more entrenched in terms of something to fight for than fighting for the freedom to live in the land that you were born in. That's a commonality in terms of wars around the world. And that's what we were going for. And I'm really glad that episode 6 has kind of finally shown what it is that we're fighting for, that we're fighting for the freedom to just be. I think it's really powerful, and I'm glad that they've gone down that road.
Adar tells Galadriel that he got tired of his children dying at the hands of Sauron, and so that he split them in two, however he said it, that he killed Sauron. We all know that can't be completely true. Sauron comes back, or it was a ruse, or something happened, and that while right now the plan is for the orcs to just have a home, it all gets corrupted fairly soon, and Sauron tempts everybody into darkness, and it becomes more than just a home. It becomes wanting to take everybody's home. That's
an awesome line too, because talking about the narrative and the empathy that you are given to the orcs and the uruks, that builds the ruthlessness of Sauron, who may or may not be dead right now. But you have empathy for this group, and then you see that Sauron's just ruthless and killing, and all these orcs that are just wanting a place to live. He's just using them, and so you've got empathy over here, and you're like, oh, that's a bad dude. That dude's a bad dude for sure.
And then we get this scene with Theo and Arondir, and Arondir brings Theo the hilt and tells him, basically, I trust you. Theo admits that he craves the power that came along with it, and Arondir leaves him with the sword, which I thought was a risky move to begin with. I was like, oh no, this is gonna end with something bad happening here. It did end with something bad happening, just not what I thought it would be. He opens it up, and it's just a hatchet. And we cut to Waldrig standing at the tower where the tower fell, and he inserts the key, the sword, into the stone, and we now see why y'all were digging trenches the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing is that they kept that from us as well. I didn't know that the trenches were going to do that. I thought the trenches were a way of keeping us covered from the sun to be able to get to a certain place. But it was, they were very smart in keeping that from the people playing the characters, because they could have somehow got out there into the environment. But I'm glad that they kept it from us, because I like being surprised by things that I'm in. It doesn't happen very often. If you're there every day, you get to see it. It kind of spoils the end product for you in some ways. But this was kind of a real moment of like, smart. That was very smart.
Watching that was you finding out all that?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I was like, yeah, of course, that's going to create the volcano. That's brilliant.
We're all worried about who Sauron is, and it was just a well played twist that, these tunnels are actually, they're for something probably bigger than you think that they're for.
I wonder how far away you got before the explosion got to y'all.
I definitely know that I survived, because I know that I've got some stuff coming up in another episode. So I think we got quite a way down the track. I think we were smart enough to know, I think our characters anyway, those that were entrusted by Adar to be close to him, I think we know what's coming. So we got ourselves in a position to be well away from that.
That scene in episode 5, where Adar is standing there and he makes the orc show his arm in the sun, and he's just standing there in the sun, and he's talking about, it's going to be gone. He's kind of reminiscing about it. And I'm just going like, okay, yeah, he wants to blot out the sun. I get it. But like the severity of that didn't hit me until the mountain erupted.
If you have a look at, what's happened with climate change, but also just what's happened with volcanoes erupting around the world, and including the tragedy that happened here a couple of years ago, that kind of volcanic activity, we see how it disrupts the world, and we see the propensity for it to be able to block out the sun and cause that kind of mayhem. I sort of, when they kept talking about, when the sun disappears, I kept thinking, I'm not sure how they're going to do that. So it was great. I mean, I like the fact that they kept stuff from us so that we didn't have to know. It kind of helped with keeping the secret, I guess. I guess there were people who knew, but I'm glad that I wasn't one of them. It's that whole idea that the orcs are sensitive to the sun. I know that Tolkien wrote that. It kind of shows the power that Adar has in terms of being one of the elves that's then twisted to become an orc rather than bred as an orc, that he still has the remnants of that elvishness in him that we all want. Yet one of the things we talked about actually at the beginning of creating these orcs is making them more upright than the ones that we see in the Third Age. That they're one generation, they're the first generation of orcs made, or related to those. They're not they haven't been beaten down with battle. They haven't been so inbred that they've become misshapen and, their bones are twisted, that they are more upright and more elven-like and have that kind of sensibility. So I hope that comes through.
In the psychological trauma of being just used as tools to get what you want, that you end up mentally seeing yourself as just a body that can be used and maybe killed, that maybe y'all don't feel that way just yet, which it's definitely coming through it so far.
Yeah, we definitely were given a sense of purpose in terms that we have, we have rights, we have morals, we have our own kind of family structure, and we care about each other. As much as there is infighting amongst us, we still care about each other. Which is something that's kind of gone by the time we get to the Third Age. They are so used, as you say, and manipulated. They're just machines of war.
There's going to be 5 seasons. How many orcs do you think you'll play? Or how many characters in the show? If you could just think 5 years down the road, if somebody said 45, would you believe it?
Man, I'd love to. They've asked me if I'm keen, and I've said, yeah, I'm keen as mustard. I like the writing. I like the franchise. I like the fans. It's a franchise that's been very good to me, so I want to hang in there as long as I can. Ultimately, it's not up to me. Ultimately, it's up to whether or not they want me back. And fingers crossed, man. I really hope that they do, because I've enjoyed it so far. But if not, I have an action figure.
Do you ever get to be an advisor to some of the, like you talk about Joseph bringing in these storylines? Like talking to you and some of the interviews that I've seen of you, if they're not asking you questions about lore and all these things, they should. But do you ever get to advise any of those things?
I certainly was part of the push to have more black speech in there. I know that they were shying away from the forbidden language, but there was a day on set, I was talking to one of the showrunners, and I said, "You've got elves speaking Elvish, and you've got dwarves speaking Kuzdal. And in a time of battle, when we're talking to each other, we would not speak common language to each other because we wouldn't want the enemy to know what we were saying." And you know, that really helped. That it was me saying, I know that the fans love it, and I know that it's, you know, it's an interesting language to hear on top of everything else. It's kind of just another layer. Joseph had done a lot of work trying to get black speech in there anyway, but it kind of helped me being there and being one of the original gangsters, if you like. Certainly when it came to, we had movement coaches, and you know, I was able to help them and sort of talk about where the idea of the structure of Orcs came from back in the beginning. So I try not to impede, and I try not to push my own barrow, but yes, certainly if I think that there's a need to talk about stuff that I know, that I do. I don't hold back.
What is your hope for the show? What do you hope it drives?
I hope that it inspires people to go and read his other works, you know, the Lost Tales, the Silmarillion, the kind of, it's such a beautiful world that he's created. You know, it's an amazing imaginary world, and there's a lot of writers who I read, Remedy Feast being one of them, David Gemmell and others, who have said that they're inspired by him in terms of his writing style, and also the worlds that he's created, you know, the map drawing and the depth of characters that he gets in there. I'm a great reader. I love books. And if this inspires other people to go back to the written word, then I think that that's a great thing. But also, I just think it's nice to have more of his work out there. It's such a, you know, beautiful landscape that he's drawn, and it's been very good to my country as well. It's been, you know, film tourism is the second biggest earner in New Zealand. If it brings people to the country to see the beauty of New Zealand and helps us have respect for that beauty, then that's a good thing as well. But also, there is something about doing fantasy where there's a camaraderie that comes out of that when you're playing these characters that kind of crosses the threshold of just working. I'm still friends with people I work with on Lord of the Rings, and great friends with I work with on The Hobbit. And it's the same with this. You know, there's a great sense of camaraderie that we're all doing something that's bigger than us. I think that comes from the literature. I think that comes from him writing about self-sacrifice, not about being about self, but being about for other people. And I think that comes across.
Have you talked to Peter Jackson lately?
I haven't actually, not for a while. I hope he's watching it. I think especially with episode 6, I think he'd be thinking it was rocking. And when I do get to see him, I'm going to see Richard Taylor this week sometime. I got to talk to Richard about the prosthetics, because, you know, they designed characters, so I got to go and work with some of those original people. And I know he's gunning for it to be good. I think there's a general consensus that they want it to be good, because you don't want to be part of something that, having set up such a legacy, I think it would be disappointing for them to think that it wasn't right. I hope that he's watching it, and I'll certainly ask him.
I did hear a story where it's Sharku, I believe, says release the wargs, and I heard a story that your teeth kind of fell out during that. Is that a true story? It's
a true story. So the very first day I worked with Sir Christopher Lee, who's a huge icon and idol of mine, you know, like I just loved his work so much. I was a bit nervous. I got taken on set by Rick Porras, one of the showrunners from Lord of the Rings, and the teeth weren't fitting. They were kind of slightly too big. They hadn't been cemented in. And I said, oh, they'll be fine. And he says to me, have you blooded the wargs? And I'm supposed to say, yes, my lord, they have tasted human flesh. They're ready for deployment or whatever. And I said, and they came out of my mouth, and they flew through the air, and they hit him in the forehead. And he just turned to Peter Jackson and he said, is it my turn to talk? He thought I must be finished. And I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry. He said, no, that's the kind of thing that happens. But yeah, like it's actually captured on camera. There's a blooper somewhere of them in slow motion flying through the air and hitting him in the forehead. Don't spit on your heroes.
I could hear you talk for hours. I mean, genuinely, thank you so much. The fact that you're sitting here for an hour talking to us, the lowliest of podcasters, about Tolkien it's just genuinely amazing that you would take the time to do this. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing to screen the books and playing some of my favorite bad guys, some of my favorite orcs, delivering some of my favorite lines from the movies as well.
Thank you. Look, I always say that I'm the lucky Kiwi. I feel incredibly fortunate to have kind of had this experience. I grew up on a farm half an hour away from the mountain used for Mount Doom. And Mount Ruapehu erupted in 1969. And I said to my mother, is that Mount Doom erupting? Well, who would have thought all of these years later that's kind of like, like a prophecy in terms of that will be my future. Farmer's son to playing all these characters. I'm the lucky guy. And so, it's a privilege for me to sit down and talk to you guys as well. And thanks for asking such great questions.